Hey guys, Becky here, FiveTwoBaker. Welcome back. This week we'll be making some blackberries and raspberries out of gum paste. You won't need any molds. We'll be working completely freehand and making them at the same time. They are super cute and easy to make. You just need a little bit of time, so definitely go ahead and make a bunch of these and save them for later. I think they're so worth it because they add such a fresh touch to the floral arrangements. But let's get right to it. To start off, we're going to cut a bunch of little wires about 3 inches in length. These are going to be around a 28 or a 26 gauge. We want something easy to work with that will hold the weight, but also just sturdy enough so that it doesn't flop around. I'm going to go ahead and give them all a little hook all in the beginning so I don't have to do it one by one later, and then get my edible glue ready on the side. Next, we're going to grab some gum paste and we're going to roll it into a chunky little oval. This will be for our blackberries. Go ahead and grab one of those wires that have been dipped in edible glue and put the hook end through the bottom of your oval. Go ahead and pinch it to the wire, make sure it's secure, and put it off to the side to dry. It doesn't matter what color this is at this point because we're going to cover it later and it's all going to be painted at the end, so the color is not that important. For the raspberries, we're going to do the same thing, make a little oval, but this time we're going to cut them in half so they look like little gumdrops, and then put the hook end of our floral wire that has been dipped in edible glue through the flat end. So here goes one for a blackberry and one for a raspberry. However large or small you make them is up to you. I just sort of go with whatever size comes out. Once you're happy with the number of centers that you have, go ahead and put them to the side to dry so they're easier to work with later. While the centers are drying, then I'm going to grab some gum paste and start making the little balls that go on the outside of the blackberries and raspberries. The color of the gum paste right now does not matter. I'm using pink because that just happens to be what I have on hand, but you can go ahead and use whatever color you have on hand. What's important here is that we have small little balls around 1 to 2 millimeters wide. And what's nice about doing this freehand and just sort of pinching that off and rolling that off really quick is that they're not perfect, they're not all the same size, and so it's going to look a bit more natural. When I'm doing this, another thing I keep in mind is that I want them to still be soft. I don't want these balls to dry up completely, so keep that in mind. If yours are drying very quickly because your gum paste just so happens to dry very quickly, then you want to add them onto your center before they dry fully, and you'll see why later. But if your gum paste takes some time to dry, then collect as big a pile of tiny little balls as you can and work with them all at once at that point. Now that I have a good amount of small little balls, what I'm going to do is grab one of my centers. The first one I'll start off with is the blackberry, and I'm going to cover it in edible glue so that all of these little balls stick to it. I don't want a thick layer, I just want it to be a bit adhesive. And I start to touch it down onto the little balls so that they stick. And then with my fingers, I'm going to drag them closer into place and sort of smush them down a little bit so that they're a bit more squeezed together and just a little bit flat. I continue to tap it down as much as it'll hold, and when I can't tap it down anymore, then I just go ahead and add them by hand. And the reason that you want these to be soft is because you want them to squish in place. You don't want it to be perfectly circled because then they won't stick on properly and it won't have that sort of flat circle shape the blackberries have. Once I'm happy with how many there are, then I just go ahead, adjust, and push it off to the side to dry. I'm going to do the exact same thing for my raspberries. On this, I'm going to add all the little balls onto the cone shape, that half oval shape that I have. I'm not going to add it to the flat bottom. And I'll do the same thing of sort of just squishing it just a little bit flat with my fingers and adjusting it. Once I have all the little balls stuck on there, then with a sharp little Dresden tool or anything else you have that can create a slit, I press it down on some of the balls so it has that little indentation that raspberries have. This is going to help to distinguish the raspberry a little bit more from another berry, or the blackberries if you're using them both. Once all the berries are set up and dry, it is time to paint them. So for these berries, the three colors I'll be using are red, a fuchsia, and a purple. The exact colors that I'm using are Sugar Flare gel colors, and they're Christmas Red, Grape, and Claret. All I'm going to do is dilute them in a bit of alcohol, but you could go ahead and use water or a clear extract. And I'll get all my colors ready because I'll be using multiple colors on each berry. For my raspberry, I'm going to start off with a red all over it, and I just want to mix a little bit of the purple or a little bit of the claret just to deepen the red, because this red is very bright and I want it to be just a bit darker. And I'm going to get all over the little crevices of the berry, focusing mostly just on the top. I'm not too worried about the bottom. And any color that sits in the crevices and sort of soaks in, I'm fine with that. It'll dry up and it'll just leave it a little darker there, which in my opinion looks better. Once I'm happy with it, I set it off to completely dry. For my blackberries, I'm going to start off with a claret, and I don't dilute it too much because I want it to be a darker color. And the way that I color this is I just kind of go all over the place. I might even do the entire berry at once, and then I go in with the dark purple and cover up any areas I want. The reason I'm doing this is because I don't want it to be all just one color. The berries sometimes have those brighter red spots where it maybe has not ripened enough, and I think it gives it more of that natural look when you have that color differentiation. Here, my purple is not dark enough, so I just made sure I grabbed a little bit more gel so that it could be darker. And I color in different spots, just making sure to get the entire little roundness of each of those little balls. And each of my berries will be different, so if some are covered entirely in dark purple, that's fine. If others just have spots of red or mostly red, that's fine too. I like having the variation in my little branches. Once I'm happy with the color, I'll go ahead and set this off to dry as well. Once my painted berries have completely dried, it's time to give them a little calyx to add to the bottom. For this, I'll be using green flower paste or gum paste, whatever you have on hand, and I'm using a tiny little calyx cutter that I have that is just the perfect size for these. I'll go ahead and pop out as many as I need, and then I add them onto a soft foam board, and using my Dresden tool, the fatter end, I'm just going to go ahead and thin out the little calyx leaves just a little bit so that they have movement, they pop up a little bit, and they're not as chunky. Once I'm happy with them, I go ahead and add a little bit of glue to the center, and I thread it through my berries wire and just make sure it adheres well. Once everything is set up and dried, the next thing I'm going to do is combine them into little clusters. So each of my berries, I'll have a few solo ones, some in pairs, some in 3s or 4s. It all depends on the look that we're going for. But I'll get those ready and then I'll put them off to the side before adding them to an entire branch. Now that I have entire little clusters, you can go ahead and just add these to a branch and add your clusters to your floral arrangement and your cake if you want. The leaves are not entirely necessary, but I wanted to add some leaves and I had some on the side, so I'm going to start off by attaching my raspberries to an 18 gauge carrier wire, and then one by one I'll just attach some leaves to it so that the branch is complete. And I'll gauge this all by eye, whatever looks good to me. If I want it to be a bit fuller or a little bit more sparse, this is all personal taste. I'll go through this exact same process for the raspberries and for the blackberries. The only real difference here is the berry itself. Also, when I'm attaching these to the carrier wire, I'll be using a brown floral tape as opposed to green because I want to create the illusion of a branch. And that's it. Here go my blackberry and raspberry branches. You could, of course, add a few flowers if you would like. I didn't share that here because I was just focused on the berry itself, but these are simple little white flowers. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please do give it a thumbs up and don't forget to hit subscribe if you haven't already. I would super appreciate that. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please drop them down below and I'll make sure to get back to you. If not, I will see you guys for the next tutorial.